Okay, everyone, let's turn it over to our speakers and get started. You can post any questions in the chat.
Okay. Hello, my name is Caren Nichter, and I'm the Cataloging and Government Documents Librarian at the University of Tennessee at Martin.
I'm Hong Li, the Electronic Resources and Discovery Librarian at UTM. Thank you for joining us today.
So Tolstoy wrote, "All happy families are alike, but each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way." And this made me sort of think of us in our GovDocs collection. I know that sounds far-fetched, but it did. I think all well-maintained government documents collections are alike, but for those that are less well-maintained, each is lacking in its own way. So we are proposing to talk about the ways our collection has been lacking and what we're doing to address that. We'll talk a bit about our library, the challenges with the collection, and then Lee will continue after that, sharing the solution, and she's a big part of our solution. So the Paul Meek Library on our campus is a selective government document depository, and that means we don't get everything the GPO publishes. We only get a selection of what we find useful to our areas of study. And our building, we've been a depository since 1957, but this building was built in the 90s. So long time ago, we became a depository. The item selection we have supports our areas of study, but the school, I should tell you, is a mid-sized state university, primarily undergraduate in a very rural area. We have a lot of fields of corn and soybeans and cattle all around us. So agriculture is a big area of study here. Now, the last totally government documents librarian we had left around a decade ago. And after that, the collection was handled sort of as a sideline by some reference librarians for about 2 years, and then for more than 2 years. And then the last couple of years before I took it on, it was a contract librarian who then left. And the director we had at the time assigned it to me. And during the time we had, other than government documents librarians, all of the cataloging was handed over to our cataloging librarian. And it was a kind of a low priority for her because she had so much else on her plate. She was also doing e-resources and database maintenance and general cataloging. So GovDocs kind of got shoved to the bottom. Because of that lack of a consistent oversight, we do have some deficiencies in how the collection was handled. And one of the deficiencies is we have had a lot of brief bibs, brief bibliographic records, just the bare minimum of information. The intention was they would be overlaid later. They would serve as sort of placeholders and be overlaid with a complete record by a librarian. But a lot of those records are still hanging around waiting. Unfortunately, the problems don't end with just brief bibs. When I inherited the coordinator role, and I'm quick to say I'm sort of an accidental government documents librarian. I had never done this before, so it's been a learning experience. But at that point, when I inherited the position, there was a backlog of about 3 years worth of uncatalogued items, and also shelves of other things that apparently had been pulled with the intention to weed them. But because we already had a big weeding project in the works, they just kind of sat on a shelf in limbo. So when we give you this background, 2 things really jumped out at us as major problems. We have a lack of staff to process the tangible items, the physical government documents as they arrive, because that does involve time and a bit of training. And we have a lack of space because the collection would be ever expanding. It's kind of hard to weed government documents if any of you have ever worked with it. But anyway, many libraries these days are searching for collaborative spaces in their buildings, and we're no exception to that. Our students have requested it. So the GovDocs collection was moved from a prime space on the first floor to a smaller, more out of the way space on the second floor to free up room for study and meeting areas. Weeding this collection had already begun before I even came to this university, but it's a super slow process. It hadn't been done for so long, if ever, that I know of, that they just had a massive number of boxes they weeded all at once. And they had more than 900 banker boxes. This image shows you just some of them waiting on shelves. Because there were so many, it created a bottleneck, and that is still inching through our system. Spreadsheets with the contents of the boxes of weeded documents are first sent to the regional depository library, which is in Memphis. And here again, I think probably insufficient labor slows it. But I mean, you know, if you've got more than 900 boxes of documents, it's going to take a while. It is moving ahead, but slowly. We're still working on it. We have a wonderful staff member, Ronnie, who's efficiently working on the procedure. And she's enlisted the help of some of our student employees. They're just a huge help. These boxes are some of the things that the regional depository in Memphis has sent back the list, the spreadsheets, and marked what they want. We take those out and send them to Memphis. And then we have to post the remaining items on ASERL, the Association of Southeastern Research Libraries Documents Disposition Database. And those remaining documents stay on the database for 45 days. Anybody who's missing something in their collection or just thinks something looks interesting can request it, and we'll send it to them. After 45 days, all of it automatically goes off the database. And at that point, we can finally dispose of what's left. Also, Ronnie, our staff person working on this, knows which state institutions collect in certain areas in order to offer some of the weeded material to them. Of course, we want to have it used if at all possible. So when she receives the spreadsheets, she can pull out things that the regional doesn't want and send it to other statewide institutions. When Lee arrived, Lee, my colleague here, arrived at on our campus last July, mid-pandemic, she brought with her from her previous position a lot of valuable knowledge of options for managing the FDLP collection. And that was really helpful to me because, as I said, I am accidental government documents librarian. I really didn't have any background in this. And furthermore, no one here did either. So I was just like flying by the seat of my pants. And Lee stepped in with real background knowledge of what to do. And one possibility was to make the collection all or primarily digital, so we would take up less space. The GPO has a web page devoted to the procedure. And one of the first things I have done was adjust our item selection profile to stop receiving CDs, DVDs, and microfiche. I mean, microfiche, I don't know, people just simply don't really use that much anymore, not here anyway. And our next adjustment, which we haven't done yet, will be to deselect items we know we can receive electronically. That will be done, but at the moment, Ronnie, what would we do without Ronnie, is doing an inventory of the existing collection. So we should know what we actually still have. From that weeding project that began 6 years ago, we still have boxes of weeded material to dispose of, boxes at every step of the process, in fact. And once we switch to mostly digital, we'll have to go back and begin weeding all over again. Although I should say the boxes now, thanks to Ronnie, are down to fewer than 200. So that's a good step. The GPO also has suggestions for beginning to move to an all electronic collection. You can find their webpage and they really have detailed instructions. But if you kind of boil it down, some of the main things that jump out at me are you should let your regional depository know what you have in mind, where you're headed, and then adjust your selection profile. And remember, I did that in a really cursory way. Of course, I'll have to go back and do it again. Make a plan for how you're going to catalog your online collection, and that's the part Lee is handling. And then go back and weed the tangible collection for items you no longer need, and you'll now be getting digitally. And then once you have a primarily or mostly digital collection, the GPO also has advice for that. You really need to make it accessible. And for an electronic collection, that means you have to have some good records in your catalog, good bibliographic records. And that's what Lee will be talking about. You need to have the equipment the public can use. If they don't have their own laptop or phone or whatever, you need to have some public computers to access the documents, staff, reference staff to help them find the documents, and then you should promote and make your collection visible. So some ways to make it visible and promote it, you could have a web page on your school's website or a LibGuide. We have a LibGuide. You should always display the FDLP logo on any web pages that are concerned with government documents, and then have clear links to the FDLP basic collection, and they will tell you exactly what the core collection is and what you have to have access to. But above all, you really need to have those good records. So, knowing that we need really good bibliographic records as a first start, then that's where Lee came in. When she came here at just the right time, she knew about the CRDP program and how that would help us clean up our bibliographic records. So I'm going to let her proceed from here and she'll tell you about it.
Okay, thank you, Caren, for providing the background information about our government documents collection. To maintain and develop the collection properly, we need to find a solution to the existing records in the library system, which can be the most efficient way to make the collection items visible and accessible to our patrons. Here is the snapshot of the collection records in August 2020. Back then, we had over 34,000 records from the whole collection, and 36% of them are for online resources. Among all of the MARC records, 75% of them were brief ones, including over 12,000 for online titles. We also noticed several issues with these brief records. A large number of them had incomplete and inaccurate description and access information in title, author, publisher, publication date, and subject headings. There was no SUDOC number available in some records. The other problem involved was the existence of blank MARC fields, duplicate and even broken URLs, wrongly coded fields, etc. I will show you a couple of examples later. Okay, here are 4 brief bib records I brought from our system. And as you can see, the records were really short compared to the regular records. And they just had minimum information about the publication. As Caren mentioned, they all had an overlay note in a 500 field to indicate their status. The public display of such brief records in a library catalog presents little information about the content and the subject areas of the publications. It was not helpful for our patrons to locate their wanted items at all. Just like the second example, as you can read, that the URLs were put in the 856 fields as long as in the note fields, which was really confusing for browsing purpose. The quality of the records raised our concerns in the following areas, including findability of library materials, relevant research results, high demand for online resources in a pandemic environment, accurate and active access information, as well as circulation data and usage tracking. The other big concern came from the library's planned migration to a new services platform in June 2021, which required us to clean up the existing records and fix problematic ones to ensure the records can be correctly mapped and transferred to the new platform. We need to keep in mind how we as a selective depository library enhance public access and awareness of government information, how we can deliver government information to patrons, what goals should we have for cataloging the GPO publications, and how we can meet the increasing demand for the online resources. Because of my previous experience with the cataloging record distribution program, CRDP, I brought it up to Caren. With her support, we decided to apply for this program offered by the Government Publishing Office GPO to federal depository libraries. GPO started in the CRDP in 2009 and has expanded each year. It is a program in cooperation with MARC that provides GPO-produced records at no charge to participating libraries. The CRDP website information is included. It covers the participants' requirements and the guidelines. Joining the CRDP means we can receive quality bibliographic records every month from MARC based on our item selection profile. The CRDP also allows us to configure the record files and customize the record size to fulfill our local needs. Caren and I met with our system manager to discuss our participation in the CRDP. And we eventually decided to pilot online resources from the government documents, considering their portion in the overall collection and the easy access through the library online services. We agreed to receive newly created cataloging records for GPO publications in electronic format from the CRDP. Here is the timeline for our participation in the program. Last August, we were aware of the openings of the CRDP for fiscal year 2021 and submit our application right away. In September, we reviewed our item selection profile and created a detailed report of select items based on their formats. This report gives us a whole picture of the collection, as well as the GPO publications we were supposed to keep in the library. Caren also updated the selection profile by deselecting a few items, as she mentioned earlier. On October 13th, we received the GPO invitation to join the CRDP and started working on the CRDP profile form as required. We also had communication with MARC back and forth to clarify our preferred MARC fields. For example, we wanted to have 590 field to record our local nodes and remove 922 fields from the GPO nodes from the records. By the end of October, we had a test load of over 500 CRDP records to our library system. The test went smoothly, and then we continued with 2 batch loads of records for October and November. The workflow of the project with MARC is straightforward. In the middle of each month, we receive an email notification from MARC with a data download file to retrieve the CRDP records. After that, we can proceed with loading the new records to our system. MARC also provides us with a title list in Excel spreadsheet. This spreadsheet has the primary information of the loaded information, including OCLC number, SUDOC number, item number, title, and the publication date. We can report MARC with any questions about the record load against the titles in the spreadsheet. Thanks to the full MARC records, the corresponding items are more browsable and searchable in the library discovery layers. On the left side is an original MARC record before it is loaded to the library system. The library catalog now shows more details of the publication along with a direct link to the URL. The title search in our Discover tool, EDS, provides an access to the title as well. Here are the couple of the screenshot of the library catalog and also the EDS search. As we move forward with the library system migration, we revisited the brief records from the government document collection in December of 2020. We decided to delete those for online titles from the library system, although they were all surprised from displaying in the library catalog, upon which we started with the CRDP in October. The deletion of over 12,000 records allowed us to have a clear date site from the collection and avoid any mapping issues with the new iOS platform potentially. As the coordinator of the CRDP, I have been monitoring the monthly batch load of the CRDP records for our library. I use MARC edit to validate records by checking fields for errors, although most of the time I didn't see something wrong with the load. Since we implemented the CRDP last fall, we have had over 3,000 new records loaded to the library system. The monthly average count is 455, which is productive in terms of creating records from the library collections. In addition, I used the GPO's FDLP Pro usage reporting tool to receive and analyze our usage data for this collection. This tool provides monthly reports about our patrons' access and the use of online resources based on the click on of pearls. Below is the part of the Pearl usage report for this March. The highlight columns of host name and referral domain identify where our patrons find and use the Pearl linking to digital government information. Lastly, as a CRDP participant of this year, we received an annual survey from GPO last week. We already sent our answers to GPO and let them know our feedback on the program. We have benefited from the CRDP in several aspects. The incoming CRDP records are selected and compiled based on our GPO item numbers, and they represent the call titles of our designated government documents collection. In other words, we do not need to worry about missing any GPO publications as a selective depository library in Tennessee. The implementation of CRDP has changed the workflow of adding new records to government documents collection. The monthly batch load has streamlined the process of importing records to the library system. Hundreds of the records can be loaded within a couple of minutes by one person. It has freed up the cataloging staff, and they can focus on cataloging the physical items received from GPO on a regular basis and continue working on the waiting project. The CRDP has also helped us improve the quality of records for the government documents collection. Different from previous brief BIBs, the full and matching CRDP records contain comprehensive information about the government items, which can enable our patrons to easily identify and access what they want through the library discovery services. In addition, the Pearl information in the high quality records has facilitated our tracking use of the government documents at our institution. With the monthly Pearl referral reports, we can see which items from where were being used by patrons, including whether they use the library website, LibGuide, or the library Discover to access government information. Such knowledge may help us refine our digital resources from the collection and advance our library services as well. And then I will pass on to Caren. She will talk about our plan for the government documents collection in the library.
So as Lee said, at the moment, we're only getting records from CRDP for electronic resources. And that's partly because we really want to move to have mostly electronic resources. We're not there yet. And it will be a process over a course of a few years because the GPO has rules for how long you have to keep items before they can be weeded. But that is our goal, to move to mostly online. And in the meantime, well, once we have the inventory completed, then we probably will consult with our liaison librarians about any physical or tangible items they think the departments they are liaison for might still want. And there's one as an example that comes to my mind. Our geology department really likes the physical geological surveys. So that's something we may continue to get in a tangible format. But as much as possible, we like to move to electronic. Once we know what we're gonna continue to get electronically and the hopefully few things we may get in a tangible format, then we would move to getting all records from CRDP because their records are so much better and it's so much easier. So that's our goals, and this is how we hope we're going to use the CRDP. Wonderful resource if you have a government document collection, and it's how we hope to clean up our collection once and for all and make it more usable and visible for our patrons. I think the pandemic taught us how important that is. So that's all we have. If you have any questions.
Okay, Caren, we've got one question in the chat so far. How are your patrons responding to these changes?
I suppose the how you would know that is from Lee's Pearl usage report. Is that what you know, we haven't actually yet gone to the departments on campus to see if there are tangible items they want to still get. At that point, we may hear what they think, but other than that, the Pearl usage, that probably tells us what's being used. At least it's more findable. Would you say so, Lee?
Yeah, I think so. That report can just give us, I know we haven't done that for a while, but we kind of, restart that report. So this way we can get the feedback from the patron, even they may come from the community, not the faculty or the staff, even the students at UTM. But overall, because we are supposed to provide the public access to the government information. So that is why we kind of, we're still moving forward with this project for the overall government documents collection. On the other hand, I haven't heard anything from our public service department with any questions about the Pearl or about the online access from the government information. So we can assume that was a good sign since we have improved the records in the library catalog. And also we kind of enable the catalog of the GPO in our EDS, which can provide another channel for the patron to get access to the government information as well.
Okay. There's another question. Are you keeping CDs or taking them out of the system and discarding them? I don't know if you've actually gotten to that level of.
We stopped receiving them, and anything we have, it would be treated like any other government document. You have to go through a certain weeding protocol, and that's kind of what I described. First of all, you have to keep most things a requisite number of years, and then you have to offer it to your regional, and then put it on the disposition database, offer it to any statewide institute. I mean, it's a whole, that's why it's so hard to weed government documents. It's a real procedure. We are not keeping CDs, DVDs, microfiche. I mean, our intention is, I don't think they're really used much. And the only physical items we probably would continue to get are any that are not available electronically. And then if we have no other recourse. But I mean, you know, things on microfiche, I would say that like congressional record, I mean, those things are online. So
Okay,
does that answer the question?
Let me see if anybody has anything else in the chat. Oh, the person who asked the question said that their regional manager gave them permission to discard theirs. So,
Oh, good.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually got a question of my own. I was just wondering what the response was from your administration to your plan to transition the collection.
I mean, well, from the library director or?
Yeah, were they like excited about this new plan? Skeptical? That
Well,
it's
like, funny because we have a new dean. He just came in February. So I think he's still, you know, just learning about all the areas and he hasn't complained. I actually think he would approve. Although, I mean, he hasn't said anything negative about it.
The other,
I saw the help. I'm an accidental. I've watched some of those webinars. Very helpful. Yes.
yeah. The other benefits we have had from the CRDP was really improved perlinks in the records. Because when we review all of the brief records in the system, we noticed most of them were created from 2001 until 2014, which means their URLs were definitely out of the date. And also I did some spot checking and found quite a few of them were broken. So that means that may direct the patrons to the wrong site, or even they cannot get the information they wanted. So through this project, I think we have improved a lot with the online access to our selected items at least. So I think from this point, our library dean should be happy with this project as well.
I see someone said they started by deselecting the Y, and you're further along than we are. That would be our next decision to make, like what areas precisely, and that is what we're going to be working on. What can we stop getting physically? But we do sort of feel like we need to consult with the liaisons just in case there's something professors really want. Yes, the student workers, oh yes, what would we do without them? I really don't know. They're wonderful.
Well, we have time for a few more questions. If anybody has anything else, feel free to pop it in the chat. And someone has said that they're using their teleworking to work on checking links from the new online overlaid online batches that they received from archive, and then their student workers are working from home.
Our student workers are actually back on campus, but they have done a lot of the help with the physical weeding, because as you saw all those boxes, when the regional sends us the MARC spreadsheets, somebody's got to go upstairs and literally pull out the boxes and go through them and find the requested material. I mean, there's just a lot of steps to it.
And Deborah says, do you take care of health or NLM documents?
No. Well, I mean, unless it's something we happen to get as part of the government documents collection. But we do have a nursing program, but no. Do you know that, Lee?
I don't think so. I think our item numbers may cover part of the house and the documents as far as I have observed. So Yeah. I can
Wow,
see that.
2,000 pounds of microfiche. That's amazing. It's funny when the regional depository sends the spreadsheets back, there's no way to predict. Some of them have quite a number of things marked, and other times they just say nothing, just send it on to ASERL. It's hard to say.
I like seeing everyone sharing their government document stories in the comments.
Well, it's if you've never worked with it, it's a whole new world. It's so very different. The SUDOC numbers are not like they're completely different from any other classification system. Then you have these rules within which you have to work in order to weed. It's really another world. There's a lot to it. I will say this, Lee and I both went through the coordinator training that comes out of Washington, D.C., and that's very helpful. Although I think Lee knows more about it than I do. She retained more of it.
Well, I'm still learning from the DLC and also the GPOs. So, but at my old library, the government documents collection was also an issue in terms of its size and the titles and also the maintenance. We just had much more older publications in the collection, including the macrophages in the steel cabinets. And they were so heavy and we cannot move them around. So some of the drawers were already stuck. So we never get them open. And that was, like Caren said, that was a kind of the corner. We just put that corner forever. And there was no plan for how to handle those macrophage and also DVDs as well. But we did do a mapping weeding project in the summer of 2019 with the help of the student workers. Those maps were folded and put into the cabinets back in the office, not to the public. They were hidden there forever. So the library director decided to get all of them because of the space issue within the whole library building. So throughout the whole summer, our student workers put out all of the maps, and most of them were kind of dusted, and then delete the records in the system. And then we kind of recycle those maps because we did offer those to the regional deposit library in Columbia, Missouri, which is where the University of Missouri is located. They are the regional deposit library. They gave us the permission to discard those maps. So that was a huge project in weeding projects in the government documents collection at my old library.
I see someone's asking about whether we use only SUDOC. Mostly SUDOC. There are a few series that have been put in the main collection, maybe because they seem more mainstream. I don't know, like the presidential papers get an LC call number and go into the main collection. And mostly it seems to be series of books that come out periodically that we add to the main collection, and then they get an LC call number. So it just depends on what it is. There honestly aren't that many of those. It's mostly SUDOC. And the collection is mostly kept like to itself. It's a separate collection. I think actually that's a reason that it's slightly intimidating to students, because you go into this separate area and it's a foreign classification system. It's, not real conducive to browsing. And I mean, unless you just, love looking at maps. And I mean, honestly, government documents there's tons of interesting stuff. You have to be willing to weed through it all because there's so much.
All right, well, that is all the people should feel free to post any last thing in the chat, but otherwise we can wrap up a few minutes early.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much. And this link is going to stay open for the next session that's going to start at 2 o'clock.
Okay.